name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to part two of the end of the 1999 project. This is the last standalone 99 project video, the final video period being my best of, worst of, and my over-under for 99. Before I get into it, I want to thank all of you for checking out the videos. If you watched one video, if you watched multiple, I really do appreciate it. It means a lot. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. I have 5 movies left to cover, so let's just get going. Starting things off with Snow Falling on Cedars.
You have a gentle heart, a good heart.
Snow Falling on Cedars was directed by Scott Hicks, who would later go on to direct No Reservations, starring Catherine Zeta-Jones and Aaron Eckhart. Nice little movie I would recommend. And it starred Ethan Hawke, Yuki Kudo, I hope I said her name right, James Cromwell for like the umpteenth time in 99. He was a busy man that year. And Max von Sydow, among others. It tells the story of a body that is washed up in a fisherman's net in a small town on the coast of Alaska after World War II. A local reporter named Ishmael, played by Ethan Hawke, is set to investigate. However, he soon finds that the investigation hits a little bit close to his home. Especially considering the group of movies I'm going to be covering on this particular episode, this is the weakest movie. It's not bad by any means. The movie looks really good, and Ethan Hawke predictably is just really solid. But if you've seen a legal thriller, you've seen this movie. There are way better movies with this particular, not this particular subject, but this kind of this kind of legal thriller. Like I said, Ethan Hawke is predictably really good, and he is connected to this case more than he initially thinks. And I won't spoil it here, but if you can figure out like where the movie's going in about 15 minutes, then congratulations, you figured out the movie. James Cromwell and Max von Sydow are both good in their respective roles. Basically, this case feels like something is completely off, and it's one of those things where you're going to get it or you're going to not really get it. I figured it out within the first 20-ish minutes or so. And this is not me saying that I'm some sort of like, look at my script writing brain. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that with a mystery that is shrouded in mystery and how the movie builds up the fact that the guy who supposedly killed the fisherman who's found in the net has a rather long list of grievances. I've watched enough Scooby-Doo in my life to know that not everything is adding up here, and you would figure it out pretty quickly. It's a pretty well-made movie. Acting is solid, it looks nice, but you have seen better versions of this story. It's pretty forgettable for me, especially in the crop of movies I'm talking about on this episode. It's the weakest one. Not bad by any means, but not particularly remarkable either. But if you thought Snow Falling on Cedars was depressing, you ain't seen depressing yet until you have watched Angela's Ashes. Angela's Ashes was directed by Alan Parker. It is based on the book of the same name, and it starred Robert Carlyle and Emily Watson, and it tells the story of a young boy named Frank McCourt, played by Joe Breen, who grows up in mid to late 1930s Ireland. He grows up incredibly poor, but the kind of poor where it's like the poor but you don't know it and you trudge through. Like the family that Frank McCourt grows up in does not have a pot to piss in nor a window to throw it out of. They are poor with a capital P. The patriarch of the family, Malachi, played by Robert Carlyle, is a former IRA member who is a perpetual drunk, and any money he earns, he immediately goes to the pub and has a run-in with a man named Mr. Guinness. And I'm not talking about Alec. The matriarch, Angela, played by Emily Watson, tries the best she can to keep the family together, but she can only take so much, and she suffers one tragedy after another. And Frank McCourt starting off when he's about 5 years old to about when he's 15, 16. He goes through a lot of change and he goes through more abuse than you might imagine. This is one of those movies that really puts me in a bit of a tough spot because, on the one hand, the movie is incredibly well made. The acting is incredible across the board. Emily Watson is just awesome here. This is some of the best work I've ever seen from her. And the story is incredibly compelling. But this movie is just flat depressing. Like, there's no getting around it. Like, just to give you all some degree of what you're dealing with here, within the first 20 minutes of the movie, three of Frank McCourt's siblings die. They're all like 5 years of age and under, and considering the time period of the mid to late 1930s, sanitation, disease, it wasn't necessarily the cleanest place to live. It is an unfortunate reality that they have to confront, that the babies got sick and the babies tragically passed away. And that all happens in the first 20 minutes of the film. And I won't say it's all downhill from there, but it doesn't get much more uphill than that. Literally, everyone in this movie is either mad, sad, wet from the rain, and drunk. Sometimes all four at once. Really, what makes this movie worth watching, even though it is incredibly depressing, is the story of Frank McCourt, how he starts out as this little boy and he slowly just becomes a man over the course of a decade and change, going from small boy to learning that his father is kind of a bad person, to getting his first job shoveling coal with the local coal miner and nearly losing his eyesight due to collectivitis, or conjunctivitis, excuse me, to becoming a postman and falling in love with and having an affair with a young girl his age who is dying of another disease, I believe is syphilis. And that's just the stuff that I can remember. This is not a happy story. He gets into a particularly uncomfortable screaming match with his mother, who, when Malachi finally just goes away and never comes back, they move in with a relative who treats them all like dirt. Really, this entire family treats the McCourts like dirt because they're from the North Country. I'm not from Ireland. I don't know what gives it away. I've been there, and there is something with the Catholic religion and the Protestant religion that I don't know the super long history of. But basically, the rest of the McCourt family hates the McCourts that we know because they are from the North Country, and it's a whole thing with the religion there. It's like it gets to the point where I'm just sitting there like, y'all are blood, and yet you pretty much hate each other. Like, what are we even, like, what's going on? Frank McCourt's teachers are no better either. They basically imply that he knows Al Capone, which is not how America works, but I digress. Basically, Frank McCourt has everything going against him, and he is not a perfect person. He makes mistakes and he does some very questionable things in his own right, but that's what makes the movie compelling for me, at least. Seeing him make these mistakes, seeing him recognize the error of his ways, and trying to do better. That I liked and I appreciated. I'm going to give this movie a great rating. This is not an easy watch by any means. As a matter of fact, yeah, the Roger Ebert clip applies here.
But I admire what he did, and I hate it.
Craft here is undeniable, but the subject material is just downright depressing and sad. So if you want to watch it, I recommend it, but know your mileage. But now let's take a hard left, going from really depressing based on a true story to Star Trek parody that's somehow better than some of the Star Trek movies that we've gotten. It's Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
You're just gonna have to kill it.
Well, go for the mouth, the throat, his vulnerable spots.
It's a rock. It doesn't have any vulnerable spots.
Galaxy Quest was directed by Dean Parisot, and it starred Tim Allen, Alan Rickman, rest in peace, Sigourney Weaver, Tony Shalhoub, and Sam Rockwell, among others. It tells the story of a group of cast members from the non-union, legally distinct Star Trek. It's basically a parody of Star Trek what happened to the cast members after the initial run ended, like the original series with William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, and all of them. What happened after them? They basically are touring the convention circuit, them being the Galaxy Quest crew, and Tim Allen's character is the only one who really like embraces it. The others are just seeing it for the paycheck, and Alan Rickman's character named Alexander Dane, played by Alan Rickman, excuse me, he absolutely hates the show and longs for the days where he got not one, not two, but three standing ovations for playing Richard III. But after one convention, the crew is approached by a race of aliens called Thermians, who have seen one episode of Galaxy Quest and have adopted it as their entire culture. And I say that without an ounce of irony or sarcasm. And basically, they're under attack from a race of hostile aliens, and it's up to the crew from Galaxy Quest to actually do a Galaxy Quest. Like I talked about in the tease, this movie is somehow both mocking, not mocking, but parodying Star Trek, but it's also better than some Star Trek movies we've gotten. I would rather watch this over Star Trek the motion picture, even though I respect what it's trying to go for. I still recognize the movie is not great. I would happily watch Galaxy Quest over that one. And I mean, some of the next generation ones, what are we doing? Like, somebody rescue Tom Hardy, please and thank you. This movie strikes a very delicate balance of being tongue-in-cheek while also being unironically really great and telling a great story about how these people who saw this as just one chapter in their career, and some have reacted to it differently, they see it as like it's a TV show. Like, what do they expect from us to actually unironically trying to help this race of aliens? It's genuinely fantastic. Tim Allen is predictably great. Alan Rickman is the best part of the movie, and it's not even close. Sigourney Weaver's great. Tony Shalhoub is great. Sam Rockwell is great. I forgot how good he was in this movie. Rainn Wilson is one of the Thermians, and he's great. This movie's got action. It's funny. A little bit of romance in there, bubbling underneath the surface. Galaxy Quest is getting an amazing grade. It just missed out on the top 20, which it just shows how stacked my top 20 is going to be. But I love this movie with my whole heart. And I mean, if somehow you've never seen it, see it. Actually, I just checked my notes. It is in my top 20. So what do I know? But now we take another hard left from sci-fi parody slash adventure to the 90s edition of Saltburn. It's The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Everybody should have one talent. What's yours?
The Talented Mr. Ripley was directed by Anthony Minghella. I'm close enough. And it starred Matt Damon, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Cate Blanchett, among others. It tells the story of a young man named Tom Ripley, played by Matt Damon. He is pretty much a nobody. He's a piano player, but also a waiter at a hotel, and he secretly longs for something more. However, one of the older socialites he meets at the hotel says that his son, named Dickie Greenleaf, played by Jude Law, is out partying in Italy and burning through all of his cash. And so he enlists Tom Ripley to go and bring him back. And so Ripley goes to Italy, finds Dickie Greenleaf, the two become best friends, and then a lot of bad things happen. This is one I had heard a lot of praise about, but I'd never seen. My mom had actually seen this movie, and that's rare that happens when she sees movies before I do. I really enjoyed this movie. It just missed out on my top 20, but I still really liked it. I think the thing that dinged it for me the most was the pacing. This movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it did not need to be that long. The first half of this movie is a little bit slow to get going. It's setup of who Tom Ripley is, who Dickie Greenleaf is, and then the subsequent friendship. But it gets to the point where I'm like, what is this, like the second or third jazz club they've been to? Like, when are we getting to the action here? And then The two of them get to San Remo, and then they step out onto a motorboat. And that's when business begins to pick up. I won't spoil anything in case you haven't seen the movie, but long story short, Tom Ripley does something pretty bad, and then he basically decides that he would rather be a really bad nobody that he would rather portray being somebody than being a nobody. And that's where I'll just leave it at that. The movie looks incredible. Italy has never looked better for me. I want to go to Italy so bad now that I've seen this movie. Matt Damon is predictably great. There is Matt Damon secretly had a good year too. He was in Dogma and now this, so he was on fire too. Jude Law was great as well. This is some of his best work that I've ever seen. Kate Blanchett is not in the movie much, but I always love seeing her and she's great. Even Gwyneth Paltrow does some really good work here too. So there is a lot going on here, and the performances are all really great. And then there's also Philip Baker Hall. Swear to God, he's been everywhere this year. He's not in the movie much, but it's nice to see him. And what it comes down to is just the intrigue and just the mystery of it all, of like, how does Tom Ripley get out of this? And he basically takes the Breaking Bad approach of, there's a bluff there, I'm gonna call it. And that's what Tom Ripley does. I'm gonna give this movie a great rating. It is too long, but when this movie works, it is really, really great. So if you have not seen it, see it. But now we are at the final movie of the 1999 project. Let's get into it. This is The Hurricane.
I've committed no crime. Crime's been committed against me.
The Hurricane was directed by Norman Jewison, who directed Flash Gordon and one of my all-time favorite movies, Fiddler on the Roof, and it starred Denzel Washington, Liev Schreiber, Dan Hedaya, among others. And this is based on the book The 16th Round, written by Reuben Hurricane Carter. It tells the story of Carter, played by Denzel Washington, who is a former middleweight boxing champion. However, one night in 1966, he is convicted of a crime that swears up and down that he did not commit, and in turn receives 3 life sentences. And over the next 20-ish years, he fights in court to clear his name. He even writes a book about it. The book falls into the hands of this charter school up in Canada, whom runs it, played by Liev Schreiber, and he and his team basically move to New Jersey to try and help Reuben Carter exonerate himself. Like I said in my Mufasa review, Mads Mikkelsen is one of those actors that you can just add him into anything and he just makes it better. Denzel Washington is another one of those actors for me. It doesn't matter what the movie is, with his presence, he automatically lifts things up. And I won't go so far as to say this is his finest role, but he is amazing in this. And seeing Reuben Carter's journey from where he starts out, where he's gone through a lot, and I won't spoil it here, but he's gone through a lot of bad things in his life, to where he's on the upswing. He's the middleweight champion of the world. He's a known name, to rotting in prison, is genuinely shocking. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there is something sinister going on here, something of a very racist nature, and that's where Dan Hedaya's character comes in. This movie shines when it's just Reuben Carter and the people from the school all trying to figure out what really happened here and trying to clear Reuben Carter's name. They do say at the beginning of the movie that some of the characterizations have been altered and changed, and I'm glad that they did that, because there are some elements of this movie that I just felt like were upped for dramatic effect. Like, Dan Hedaya plays a cop, but he approaches it like he's like this mob officer, where he is incredibly racist, but he's also like a cartoony kind of racist, where he's intimidating these school people to, like, you're from Canada, so you should go back to Canada. I'm like, Mr. Hedaya, The Sopranos just premiered a few months ago, but this is not The Sopranos. What are you doing? I'm more than aware of the time period and how Unfortunately, for a lot of people, racism just canceled out any form of practicality. But I'm fairly certain, like, Dan Hidea's character may not have had the power to cut off the axles of the tires the of the rental car that these school people have to get around town. That seems a bit much. And if that did happen, then I apologize. It clearly happened. But just there are some elements of this that just felt a little over the top for me. It's genuinely cathartic when Reuben Carter's finally exonerated. The court scene where he's finally told that he can go free is genuinely some of the one of my favorite endings of any movie I watched for this 99 project. So I'm going to give this a great rating. It is too long. A lot of the stuff feels like it was up for dramatic effect, but I don't care. The movie is great when it is on. Denzel crushes it. Liev Schreiber does a great job as well. All the actors are doing double duty here. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. But that is it. The 99 Project is over. Now all that's left is the best of, worst of, and my over-under video, and that should be coming in the next couple of days. But again, I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. If you watched one video, great. If you watched more, that's great too. I appreciate it very much. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.